How many generals and admirals have you fired? I don't know the exact number, but you don't know the number. It's 8. Can you explain why any of them were fired? This is what accountability looks like when someone actually knows what they're talking about. Congressman Seth Moulton, a Marine captain who led the first platoon into Baghdad for combat tours in Iraq, worked directly for General Petraeus, systematically dismantled Pete Hegseth's lies about sharing classified information via signal. Hegseth claimed he can't say if the launch time for F-18s going into combat was classified. Moulton trapped him with his own words. It's not classified to disclose whether it's classified or not. Hegseth kept deflecting, saying everything from CENTCOM is automatically classified. So, Moulton got him to admit the information was classified, then asked if he'd take accountability. Hegs refused. Then, Moulton revealed Hegseth fired 8 generals and admirals, but couldn't explain why any of them were fired. Asked about the successful Houthi operation, it cost hundreds of millions of dollars and exactly $0. Commercial ships have transited the Red Sea since. Hegseth's entire defense collapsed under questioning from someone who actually understands military operations. Watch this masterclass. If you want to support the channel and get exclusive videos, kindly hit the join button below. That's how we keep this going. Secretary Hegseth, I'd like to clarify a few important details for the record. When you texted the launch time for F-18s going into combat over enemy territory facing anti-aircraft missiles on an unclassified signal chat, did that launch time come from Central Command? Yes or no? I know what you're referring to, and there were no, it's a very simple question. Did it come from, it's a very simple question. Did it come from Central Command? Well, in this committee, no way in which I communicate or what I communicate on a successful strike is something that I would share. So, you can't even identify the combatant command under which this operation occurred. Well, everybody knows the OK. So, everyone knows the Central Command. So, when Central Command sent you this information, did they send it on a classified system or an unclassified system? Well, as you know, having served yourself, any way that the Secretary of Defense communicates or provides information in and of itself is classified, not to be discussed. So, what was the classification marking of the launch time when it was sent to you? Because DoD regulations require information on classified systems to be marked. What was the classification mark time? Yeah. What was the classification marking? Because again, classifications of any information in an ongoing operation that was successful are not things that would be disclosed in a public forum. You can very well disclose whether or not it was classified. It's not classified to disclose whether or not it was classified. And in fact, DoD regulations state that any classified information has to be labeled with its classification. Was it classified secret or top secret? What's not classified is that it was an incredibly successful mission against the Houthis. Okay? So it was classified. So, are you trying to say that the information was unclassified? I'm not trying to say that's what I thought. You're not saying that. So, you took classified information from Central Command that had a classification marking on it, because that's what's required by DoD regulations, and you put it on an unclassified system. So, we're going to get a report in a few days from the DoD Inspector General, and if the DoD Inspector General finds what is pretty obvious, both to you smiling there in the witness seat and to all of us up here, that the information was in fact classified, do you plan to take any accountability for that? As I pointed out, you said that accountability is bad. Does that not apply to you? As I said at the time, Congressman, there were no names, targets, locations, units, routes, sources, methods, no classified information. Okay. So, if it comes back that it is classified, will you take accountability or not? We've already established, you've already admitted that it was classified because everything you get from CENTCOM is classified. You just explained that to me. That's how you justified not answering the question. Not what I said. I didn't confirm any classification or okay. So if it is what I know, is that everything I share, everything I talk about. Mr. Secretary, does accountability apply to you or not? Is classified whether I talk or not? Does it apply to you or not? Does what apply to me? Accountability. You said accountability is back at the Secretary. And you know what? The Houthis were held accountable for shooting at our. I'm just asking if it applies to you successfully. I'm not asking about previous administration, let our ships get shot at, and nothing was done about it. And thankfully, because of the skill and courage of our troops on asking about, we actually put them in a place we called for a ceasefire. I reclaim my time. I'm just asking if accountability applies to you. It's a very simple question. We use leadership by course, unlike, I serve at the pleasure of the president, like everybody else does. So it only applies to the president, not to you. I serve at the pleasure. You talked about the success of the Houthi operation, about how much money did it cost. How much money did you spend? On missiles shooting at the Houthis. Well, you'd have to compare that with what it cost. I'm just asking how much did it cost? Are shipping lanes around? I'm told it's several $100 million, maybe close to $1 billion. How many US-flagged commercial ships have transited the Red Sea since your so-called successful operation? Well, thankfully, unlike the previous administration, the answer is 0. Military vessels transit. No. I didn't ask about military vessels. I asked which would be the precursor for how many commercial vessels. It's been several weeks. How many commercial vessels, US-flagged, have transit? Would you, Mr. Congressman, put civilian ships? The questions are not to me. Secretary, they're to you. We have responsibly put military. The answer is 0. I reclaim my time. How many generals and admirals have you fired? I don't know the exact number, but you don't know the number. It's 8. Can you explain why any of them were fired? Like, just explain why. Why was the Army JAG fired? Why did you fire him? They all serve at the pleasure of the president. And I think, no, I'm just asking you why. General Caney is a great example of asking why we need. You probably learned at Princeton what why means. Why did you fire him? They serve at the pleasure of the president, and we want better representation in each and every of those. You can't explain why you fired any of them. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says fired the Army's top officer, Randy George, asking him to put in his retirement papers and step aside effective immediately. According to a DoD official, George is a Biden nominee who had more than a year left in his 4-year term as Army Chief of Staff. His departure comes as the Washington Post reports 2 other Army generals have been shown the door. That's according to 2 defense officials who spoke on condition of anonymity. Want to bring in Washington Post Pentagon reporter Dan Lameth. Dan, what's your understanding of what's happening here? Secretary Hegseth has had an interest in kind of turning over the senior military leadership for some time here. He's been very pointed about doing so. He has not always explained why he's doing so. And there's a lot of frustration within the Army over that. Particularly as not only these 3 gentlemen, but also several other names last year had presumed promotions that were blocked by Secretary Hegseth. In some cases, they would have become 4-star generals or taken on different 4-star general roles. Those positions also were blocked. So it's kind of a part of a larger pattern here. Yeah, I was going to say none of this is happening in a vacuum because Hegseth has now removed more than a dozen senior military leaders from their positions, including all but 2 Joint Chiefs. You can see their names and faces on the screen. What's the impact of that? Especially in the midst of an ongoing war with Iran, I think the impact really is cumulative at some effect. The military is built where any one leader probably can be replaced, and within a short period of time, the military can move forward. But when you start taking out many leaders, multiple services, multiple joint chiefs, there's a cumulative effect to that, where you start wondering how much institutional knowledge has been lost, how many, points of contact that these generals have where they can reach back to allies, partners, adversaries, and affect change in a crisis. Yeah, there's a reason that experience matters, especially in roles like this when the stakes are so high. And the stakes are so high given the news. The tintu etapta intwang kansat, etentu insate enakatve ensaitat ichu entomat vikatjai. We've been reporting over the course of the past hour. I wonder what you're hearing from your Pentagon sources about this search operation for an American pilot in Iran. If you have any sense of what led to that jet going down too. I don't at this point. I would note, we did have fighter jets that went down earlier in the conflict. I know that case they landed in Kuwait. Everybody was safe. This is a very different set of circumstances here, with it being in IR, in Iran, potentially adversaries coming after the personnel down on the ground. I mean, there's a full crisis in the moment here to try and get these people back as quickly as possible. Let's break down exactly what happened here and why it matters. Because this wasn't just a heated exchange. It was a masterclass in accountability delivered by a man who lived the values the Defense Secretary claims to uphold. Seth Moulton isn't your typical congressman. He's a Harvard-educated physicist and a Marine who led an infantry platoon into Baghdad and voluntarily returned for a fourth combat tour at the personal request of General David Petraeus, who praised his off-the-charts determination. When Moulton, who now serves as ranking member of the Subcommittee on Strategic Forces, sat across from Pete Hegseth, he brought a level of operational expertise that allowed him to methodically dismantle the Secretary's defense regarding a series of unclassified signal texts. The core of the interrogation focused on Hegseth texting the launch times of F-18s, critical operational data on an unsecure platform, a move Hegseth tried to bury under layers of circular logic, by claiming he couldn't discuss the classified nature of the mission, while simultaneously refusing to admit the information was labeled as such to avoid legal repercussions. Moulton saw right through the deflection, pointing out that it isn't classified to disclose whether something is classified, eventually forcing Hegseth into a corner where his desire for self-preservation collided with his duty to the truth. This was further validated by a subsequent Inspector General report, which confirmed the original document was marked secret, that Hegseth's messages matched it almost perfectly, and that his actions created a genuine risk to US pilots and mission objectives, an offense that would see any enlisted service member criminally prosecuted and dishonorably discharged. Moulton didn't stop at operational security. He pivoted to the staggering inefficiency of the Red Sea operations, revealing that while Hegseth boasted of success, the reality involved spending nearly $1 billion in missiles, while exactly 0 US flag commercial ships have actually transited the area. Finally, the exchange touched on the accountability Hegseth often preaches but rarely practices, specifically the firing of 8 senior general and flag officers. When pressed to explain the reasoning behind even a single one of these removals, Hegseth offered nothing but the defense that they serve at the pleasure of the president, failing to articulate any professional standard or strategic cause. This lack of leadership combined with the mishandling of secret information and a complete inability to justify billion-dollar failures led Moulton to a devastating conclusion that putting someone so fundamentally unqualified in charge of the world's most powerful military isn't just a political mistake, it's a national security catastrophe. Our service members deserve a leader who understands the weight of their sacrifice, who takes responsibility for their mistakes, and who can lead with the integrity that Moulton displayed in combat, rather than a leader who treats the Pentagon like a personal playground for political purges and unsecure group chats. You're watching Inside Politics. Hit that subscribe button and help us reach 100,000 subscribers and comment your thoughts.